There was a time when the phrase emotional detachment sounded cold to me, almost cruel, as if it meant not caring, not loving, not feeling. I associated it with distance, avoidance, numbness, and for a long time, I rejected it, because I believed that to feel deeply was to be alive, and to detach was to diminish life. But what I eventually discovered changed everything. Emotional detachment is not the absence of emotion. It is the mastery of it. And once you understand that distinction, you realize that emotional detachment is not a defense mechanism. It is an art. Most people live inside their emotions without realizing it. Every reaction, every decision, every word is filtered through whatever they are feeling in that moment. Anger becomes action. Fear becomes avoidance. Excitement becomes impulsivity. Sadness becomes identity. Emotions don't inform their lives. They run them. And because emotions are temporary, unpredictable, and often exaggerated by the mind, this creates a life that feels unstable, exhausting, and reactive. Emotional detachment begins the moment you realize a quiet truth. You are not your emotions. You experience them, but they are not you. This sounds simple, almost obvious, but living it is rare. Most people intellectually understand this idea, yet emotionally remain fused with whatever they feel. Detachment is the practice of separation. Not suppression, not denial, separation. When you are emotionally detached, you still feel sadness, but sadness does not become despair. You still feel anger, but anger does not become destruction. You still feel fear, but fear does not become paralysis. The emotion arises, is acknowledged, and is allowed to pass without hijacking your behavior. That space between feeling and action is where detachment lives, and that space is power. The reason emotional detachment feels unnatural at first is because the nervous system is addicted to immediacy. Reacting feels relieving. It discharges tension quickly, but relief is not resolution. Reacting may feel good in the moment, but it often creates long-term consequences. Damaged relationships, regret, confusion, loss of control. Emotional detachment asks you to tolerate discomfort a little longer in exchange for clarity later. This is why emotionally detached people often appear calm when others are overwhelmed. It's not because they don't care, it's because they have trained themselves not to collapse into the emotion. They observe it instead. They notice the sensation, the thoughts attached to it, the urge to act. And then they wait. Waiting is not weakness. Waiting is restraint. One of the first lessons in emotional detachment is understanding impermanence. Emotions feel permanent when you're inside them, but they are not. They rise, peak, and fall like waves. When you react at the peak, you act from distortion. When you wait for the wave to pass, your perception clears. Detachment is patience applied to emotion. Another critical aspect of emotional detachment is disentangling identity from feeling. Many people say, "I am angry, I am anxious, I am broken." Detachment changes the language internally. It becomes, "I am experiencing anger, I am noticing anxiety, I am feeling pain." This shift seems small, but it changes your relationship with the emotion. You are no longer trapped inside it. You are in dialogue with it. Emotionally detached people do not ignore their emotions. They listen to them without obeying them. Emotions are information, not commands. Fear might signal a boundary. Anger might signal injustice. Sadness might signal loss. But none of these require immediate reaction. They require understanding. Detachment also protects you from manipulation. When someone knows how to trigger you, they can control you. Emotional buttons are leverage. The more reactive you are, the more predictable you become. Detachment breaks that predictability. When you no longer respond automatically, external attempts to provoke lose power. This is why emotionally detached people are often described as unshakable, not because nothing affects them, but because nothing owns them. There is also a deep self-respect in emotional detachment. You stop outsourcing your internal state to external circumstances. You stop allowing other people's moods, opinions, or behaviors to dictate how you feel. You reclaim sovereignty over your inner world. That sovereignty creates stability. Emotionally detached individuals tend to have clearer boundaries. They don't over-explain. They don't over-justify. They don't overreact. When something doesn't align, they step back instead of escalating. They choose distance over drama. This is not avoidance. It is discernment. Detachment is especially misunderstood in relationships. Many people equate emotional intensity with love. The more reactive, the more passionate. The more volatile, the more real. But intensity is not depth. Often it's insecurity. Emotional detachment allows love without chaos, care without control, presence without possession. In healthy detachment, you can love deeply without losing yourself. You can support others without absorbing their emotions. You can empathize without drowning. This is essential for emotional longevity. Without detachment, empathy becomes exhaustion. Another layer of emotional detachment is learning to let things be unresolved. Most people crave closure immediately. They want answers, explanations, reassurance. Detachment accepts uncertainty. It understands that not everything can be fixed, clarified, or controlled right now. And that's okay. This tolerance for uncertainty reduces anxiety dramatically. Anxiety feeds on the need for certainty. Detachment loosens that grip. You stop demanding immediate emotional resolution. You trust that clarity will come with time. Emotionally detached people also recover faster from emotional events. They don't replay conversations endlessly. They don't ruminate as much. They extract lessons instead of reliving pain. This efficiency preserves mental energy. There is also a spiritual dimension to emotional detachment. It requires humility. The humility to accept that your current emotion is not the ultimate truth, that your perspective is temporarily filtered. Detachment creates space between ego and awareness. You stop defending emotional reactions as identity. This doesn't make you cold, it makes you free. Freedom is the core benefit of emotional detachment. Freedom from emotional slavery. Freedom from constant reactivity. Freedom from the need to be understood immediately. Freedom from internal chaos. It takes practice. Detachment is not achieved once and kept forever. It is a daily discipline. Some days you will detach gracefully. Other days you will react. The difference is awareness. Once you've tasted detachment, you recognize when you've lost it, and you return. One of the most powerful results of emotional detachment is clarity in decision-making. When emotions are loud, judgment is distorted. Detachment quiets the noise. You can evaluate situations more objectively. You can choose responses aligned with values instead of moods. This makes emotionally detached people excellent leaders, negotiators, and problem solvers. They don't escalate under pressure. They don't panic when things go wrong. They create calm in chaos. Emotionally detached people also tend to be selective with their energy. They don't engage in every argument. They don't attend every emotional invitation. They choose where to invest. This selectivity protects peace. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the ability to remain centered within it. Another misunderstood aspect is that emotional detachment often increases compassion. When you're not overwhelmed by your own emotional reactions, you can see others more clearly. You understand that their behavior is often driven by their own unmanaged emotions. This understanding softens judgment. Detachment allows forgiveness without forgetting, understanding without tolerating harm, distance without hatred. As you cultivate emotional detachment, you may notice a shift in how others respond to you. Some will feel calmer around you, others may feel uncomfortable. People who rely on emotional chaos may find your steadiness unsettling. That's not your problem. Detachment naturally filters relationships. It attracts those who value stability and repels those who thrive on volatility. Emotionally detached people often live quieter lives, not empty, intentional. They don't chase highs or dramatize lows. They experience life more evenly. This emotional consistency supports mental health over time. In a world that rewards outrage, oversharing, and constant emotional expression, detachment is countercultural. It is a quiet rebellion, a refusal to let your inner world be exploited. The art of emotional detachment is not about withdrawing from life. It is about engaging with life without being consumed by it. It is about standing in the river without being swept away by the current. When you master emotional detachment, you realize something profound. You can feel everything and still be at peace. You can care deeply and still remain free. You can experience life fully without surrendering control. That is the art. And once you begin practicing it, once you experience the relief of not reacting, not collapsing, not being pulled in every direction by every emotion, you understand why emotional detachment is not coldness. It is strength. It is clarity. It is freedom. What most people don't realize is that emotional detachment is learned through pain long before it is learned through wisdom. Very few people wake up one day and decide to master their emotions out of curiosity. Most are pushed toward detachment by exhaustion, by heartbreak, by disappointment repeated so many times that reacting starts to feel heavier than restraint. Detachment is often born where emotional excess once lived. At first, it doesn't feel like strength. It feels like withdrawal, like pulling back because you're tired of being hurt. And that stage is real. There is a version of detachment that comes from fear, from avoidance, from emotional injury. But that is not the art. That is the beginning. The art of emotional detachment emerges when you stop detaching to protect yourself and start detaching to understand yourself. There is a moment when you realize that reacting emotionally doesn't just hurt relationships. It hurts you. Every overreaction leaves residue. Every impulsive word lingers. Every emotional spiral drains energy you don't get back. Over time, the cost becomes undeniable. And that's when detachment stops feeling like loss and starts feeling like relief. One of the first shifts that happens is how you experience triggers. Before detachment, a trigger feels like an attack. Something happens, and instantly, your body reacts. Tight chest, racing thoughts, emotional urgency. Detachment doesn't eliminate the trigger. It changes your relationship to it. You still feel the initial sensation, but you no longer rush to interpret it as truth. You begin to notice that many triggers are echoes of old experiences, old fears, old wounds. Detachment creates enough distance to recognize that the present moment is not the past repeating itself, even when it feels that way. That recognition alone prevents countless unnecessary emotional escalations. Emotionally detached people often develop a habit of pausing internally. Even when they speak quickly on the outside, there is an internal delay. A moment of observation. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? What story is my mind attaching to this sensation? That internal pause is where choice is born. Without detachment, life feels like a series of emotional ambushes. With detachment, life feels navigable. Another profound shift happens in how you relate to other people's emotions. Before detachment, someone else's mood could hijack your entire day. Their anger made you defensive. Their sadness pulled you down. Their anxiety infected your nervous system. Detachment introduces a boundary. You can recognize what someone else is feeling without absorbing it. This doesn't make you less empathetic. It makes your empathy sustainable. There is a dangerous myth that to care deeply, you must suffer deeply. Emotional detachment dismantles that myth. You learn that compassion does not require self-sacrifice. You can support someone without drowning with them. You can listen without losing your center. This is especially important for people who naturally feel deeply. Without detachment, emotional depth becomes emotional burnout. With detachment, Depth becomes wisdom. Emotionally detached people often appear slower to react, but faster to recover. While others remain stuck replaying emotional moments, detached individuals extract meaning and move forward. They don't cling to emotional states as identities. They don't turn feelings into narratives about who they are. This is one of the most liberating aspects of detachment. You stop defining yourself by your emotional weather. A bad day doesn't mean a bad life. A painful moment doesn't mean a broken self. Emotions become experiences, not verdicts. Detachment also changes how you experience conflict. Before, conflict felt threatening, like something that had to be won or avoided. Detachment reframes conflict as information. When someone reacts strongly, you become curious instead of defensive. What does this reaction reveal? What need is unmet? What fear is being exposed? This curiosity diffuses escalation. You stop matching emotional intensity and start understanding it. Many conflicts dissolve simply because one person refuses to react. Silence in this context is not avoidance. It is regulation. Another layer of emotional detachment is learning when not to engage. Not every comment deserves a response. Not every opinion deserves space in your mind. Not every emotional invitation deserves acceptance. Detachment sharpens discernment. You choose your battles, and more importantly, you choose your peace. This selectivity is often misunderstood as indifference. But indifference is disengagement without awareness. Detachment is engagement with boundaries. Emotionally detached people are often deeply intentional in their relationships. They don't bond through chaos. They don't confuse intensity with intimacy. They value consistency, emotional safety, and mutual regulation. As a result, their relationships may be fewer, but they are steadier. There is also a profound relationship between emotional detachment and self-trust. When you know you can experience strong emotions without losing control, fear diminishes. You stop being afraid of how you'll react. You trust yourself to handle discomfort without imploding or exploding. That trust changes everything. You become more willing to face difficult conversations, more willing to sit with uncertainty, more willing to take risks aligned with your values. Emotional detachment doesn't make you passive. It makes you brave in a quieter way. One of the most subtle but powerful benefits of emotional detachment is mental clarity. When emotions are constantly driving thought, the mind becomes distorted. Detachment clears the fog. Thoughts slow down. Priorities sharpen. You can think long-term instead of being trapped in the urgency of the moment. This long-term perspective is rare and it's invaluable. It allows you to sacrifice short-term emotional relief for long-term alignment. To stay silent now so you don't regret speaking later. To walk away now so you don't stay stuck longer. Emotionally detached people often feel less dramatic internally, but more stable. Life doesn't feel like a roller coaster. Highs are appreciated without dependency. Lows are endured without catastrophe. This emotional equilibrium supports physical health, mental health, and relational health. There is also a spiritual quietness that emerges with detachment. When you stop clinging to emotional reactions, you experience a deeper layer of awareness, a sense of observing life instead of being consumed by it. This doesn't make life dull, it makes it spacious. Space is where insight lives. As you practice emotional detachment, you may notice that your inner dialogue changes. It becomes less judgmental, less absolute. Instead of "this is unbearable," it becomes "this is uncomfortable." Instead of "I can't handle this," it becomes "this is difficult but temporary." Language matters because it shapes perception. Detachment refines language internally, and that refinement stabilizes experience. Another important realization is that emotional detachment does not eliminate vulnerability. It redefines it. Vulnerability no longer means emotional exposure without boundaries. It means honest expression with self-regulation. You can share your feelings without demanding rescue. You can be open without being raw to the point of harm. This kind of vulnerability builds respect, not chaos. Emotionally detached people are often trusted with responsibility. Others sense their stability. Their ability to stay calm under pressure. Their capacity to listen without escalating. This is why detachment often correlates with leadership, even in informal ways. People feel safer around those who are not ruled by their emotions. But emotional detachment also requires grieving. Grieving the version of yourself that reacted impulsively. Grieving relationships built on intensity rather than health. Grieving the belief that emotional chaos was passion or depth. Letting go of those illusions can feel like loss. But what you gain is far greater. You gain peace without numbness. Connection without control. Emotion without domination. Over time, emotional detachment becomes less of a technique and more of a way of being. You don't consciously detach. You simply notice, allow, and choose. The nervous system learns that it doesn't need to sound the alarm constantly. Life still happens. Pain still arises. Joy still comes and goes. But you are no longer dragged behind your emotions. You walk alongside them. That is the art, and it is an art because it requires practice, patience, and humility. You will fail, you will react, you will get pulled in, and then you will return. Detachment is not perfection. It is recovery. Every time you recover faster, you strengthen it. In a world addicted to emotional spectacle, emotional detachment is radical. It refuses to perform pain. It refuses to monetize outrage. It refuses to let the inner world be exploited for reaction. This refusal is not coldness. It is sovereignty. When you master emotional detachment, you understand something essential. Your emotions are visitors, not rulers. They come to deliver messages, not commands, and you, finally, are free to decide what to do with those messages. That freedom changes how you move through the world. You speak with intention. You act with clarity. You rest without guilt. You engage without losing yourself. And that is why emotional detachment is not the absence of love. It is the condition that allows love to last. It is not distance. It is balance. It is not emptiness. It is space, and in that space, you find the quiet, steady strength that no longer needs to react to prove it exists.